Go check it out.
What? Come on, just go in, man. No.
Eric,
Go in. You go.
whoa, hey!
What do they got?
I don't even know, man.
You got this! Alright, easy. Easy, easy. Oh, easy. Yeah! Yeah! Woo! Yeah! Yeah!
All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed that. But yeah, so that was Chalk Warfare, and it's definitely one of our most successful series on our YouTube page. That was the third one, and you know, it really has brought our channel to a point where we're able to, we were able to build an audience and have, or be able to create more original content and be able to, have viewers for that, because I know that's a big issue for people when creating content, and that's why, when I'm speaking here today about creating your own content. I look at platforms like YouTube, and even back in the day when we started our YouTube channel, YouTube was really only the one avenue for creating content. But now there's just so many different different paths to take in creating original content. Facebook's a huge player. You have YouTube still is. You have Snapchat. Just so many different ways to have a voice. Be creative and gain a following. It's often really hard to get started. This was a big breaking point for us with Chalk Warfare, and it's something that we hope to continue as well. There will always be talks of another Chalk Warfare. Hopefully, maybe bring value to the series with a game or something. But before, and I kind of touched on this too. I'm going to give you some tips if any of you guys are hoping to create original content. But I also have a few reasons as to why you'd probably want to be creating original content or creating content online. And this is just from my own experience. So I've got 3 reasons freaking out. So the first being creativity, like I kind of touched upon. You have no limits. You're able to do whatever you want. you're not censored in any way. Kind of, yeah, guidelines. There are guidelines on YouTube, but you're allowed to do whatever you want. No one's really telling you what to do because you're making your own content. And there's something really beautiful about that, and it allows you to really do what you want. The second is motivation. This is a big thing. When you create original content, you gain an audience. It gives you a reason to create more content. And especially when you're creating content on the internet. Often you need to have fast turnaround. You need to be consistent. So often when you're in a film school, you make few projects. You work really hard on something. And that's great. That's awesome. But you can really learn from the internet when you create one piece of content in 2 weeks, and then you have comments and just live feedback, analytics. You can see what works, what doesn't, and you can improve in 2 weeks. And you can make another piece of content. It kind of lives and dies, but there's also still a lot of replay value on the internet too, and that's something that's really great and unheard of in a way for making new media. And then the last is revenue, of course. There are a lot of people that now run social media platforms, YouTube channels, various different platforms for their job, their full-time job. And you are able to do this through advertisements and also branding opportunities themselves, as you are able to create like a small business for yourself and sponsor different brands within your content that you believe in. So tips on running a successful YouTube page then. Consistency is definitely one of the largest or the biggest tip that I have. And it's something that we are continuing to learn, especially being a visual effects channel, because it's very hard to push out consistent visual effects. So as you can see, there's a lot of tips and tricks that we use. I actually do all the visual effects on the channel as well. So there's a lot of tips and tricks I have to use in order to really push these things out fast. Whether that be shooting something on tripod and adding camera shake where someone may not notice, or just really understanding where you'll have diminishing returns in your visual effects with audience. And it's really funny, actually, online, a lot of people prefer something a little more organic. I grew up watching YouTube videos, and I was really inspired to make my own visual effects content. I find that when you are able to inspire someone to do something, it has a lot more value to them than just making something that's truly cinematic on the internet. Because people look at it and they say, wait, I can do that too. And that's really incredible. So the next step is engagement. One thing you have on the internet that you don't have working, making films or television shows is being able to interact with your audience. And this is something that we also have been learning. We started doing live streams, actually, and it's really fun. We're able to, with our audience, interact with them real time, respond to comments, Q&As, and we actually started doing it after major uploads. One video that I hope to share at the end, if we have time, is a little video called Stick Figure Battles. And it's me and my partner Eric, and we were in detention, and we started drawing in this it's weird I chose a similar idea, but we have 2 videos about drawing on our page. It's Shock Warfare and Stick Figure Battles. So they're not all about drawing, but we draw stick figures and they come to life on the whiteboards. And we were then able to make a live stream, and at the beginning we put a little pre-recorded clip of us playing Hangman, and then we finish the last thing and the guy falls and we freak out and we have to erase the line so that the guy runs off screen. And because that was during a live stream, everyone thought it was live and they were freaking out. So it was just it's a really fun opportunity to be able to engage your audience, and they know that you're a human being. And that goes a lot further. That personality will go a lot further. And experimentation, that's a fun thing on the internet. Like I said, being consistent. You're able to really, do what you want, and some big tools are coming out now. For instance, VR is becoming a huge thing in content creation. And on YouTube, everyone has a phone in their pocket, so you can experiment with 360-degree video. And that's something that we started doing earlier this year. We made a little short called Channel Surfer, where Eric got sucked into his grandma's TV and traveled through various television stations, and you can look around the frame, so you can see South Park in 360. and you can see Back to the Future, and Eric runs into Marty McFly. But just really fun to be able to experiment with these new, the new features that are offered on YouTube, and it's just an ever-changing platform. YouTube now is not the same as YouTube was last year. It changes that quickly. And the fourth is learning. You know, when you're working on a YouTube page, you really can't stop. You're kind of a jack of all trades. Like I mentioned before, like in Chalk Warfare, you know, I directed that, and I was a cinematographer for it, and I did the visual effects, and I had to do a lot of the sound. You know, it's working with minimal budget, and it's also just because a lot of this stuff's really interesting. But yeah, it's almost like you really have to understand the entire process. You can't really just know how to do one thing, especially when you're creating a channel or when you have a platform that specializes in content creation and technological stuff. And the fifth is have fun. That's the most important tip, honestly, because why would you want to build an audience for a platform that you hate uploading to? Because then you're just, that's a recipe for disaster. You're not going to want to be able to create consistent content. But it looks like I have enough time to show a short little 3-minute video. So I'm going to show you guys the stick figure battles video, and that should wrap us up. And if you guys have any questions, you can ask me at the Q&A.
Hey, check it out.
Thought I said no doodling in detention.
Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, make sure to share it with a friend.
It's a little end card that we do for the YouTube page. I apologize for any like slow frame rate. It's probably due to the resolution of the file. But I invite you guys to check out the stuff on the channel. The link right here, and then my email is also listed down below. So I invite you guys to check out that. Enjoy the content, and thank you guys so much for having me.
Okay, so if you guys can take some seats up front, and we'll open this up for questions and answers and have a little chat. We're good? Okay. I'll give you this one. I'll take this one because this is so much better. All right. Well, let's just get right to it. I have to go to Tony first. I'm sorry. I just have to. Yeah.
Where did you get the idea for chocolate?
So I was on the phone with Eric a while back, and we're talking to our buddies. We were very fortunate when we were younger to have befriended. I'm from South Carolina, so we were very fortunate to have befriended friends in South Carolina who were a bit older than us. So we had people that didn't look like teenagers or like middle schoolers running around in the videos. And we were all talking on the phone, and Eric just goes, "Hey, I had this idea." It's like he just said chalk warfare. And then during spring break, I was like, we should do that. So through the progression of our videos, the video right before Chalk Warfare originally came out, we had a tracked gun. So you can kind of see the progression of the visuals. So all of a sudden, wait, we can do the tracked gun, so why don't we do that Chalk Warfare idea? And we did one test of it, and we thought it looked awesome. And then we filmed it and produced it.
Sir.
Can you talk to us techie types about tools? Pardon the alliteration.
Tools for visual effects. All the visual effects I do are done in After Effects. Adobe After Effects, I use the Adobe Suite. So it was edited in Premiere, just round-tripped over to After Effects. And we use 3ds Max, or I use 3ds Max for all of the rendered 3D content. To actually pull off the effect, and we have videos online. We don't really keep secrets on the channel. People ask, we make a behind-the-scenes video and show them how. But we basically, and some of the shots you can see, they're holding cardboard. It's painted cardboard, and I was talking earlier about this. We could have done this a lot more effectively. Now if we had a budget, but basically we had this painted cardboard, and then we painted out the background. So we put the background in place of it, so there was no gun, and we planar tracked the gun prior so that we could apply the chalk gun, which was just from reference pictures, Photoshop brush, bring that into After Effects, apply it, and then roto out the hands, put the hands over top of the gun, add a matte to shadow the hands so that the hands had a shadow underneath, applied onto the gun. And that was just kind of the simple effect that we would do. And then all of the hits, so like for instance, the blood hits because we don't want it to be too gory, and the dust, it's all just powder, like flour, stock footage, tinted. I hope that answered your question. Yeah.
A question about layover, actually. I was just wondering if capturing some of the shots happened sort of unpermitted, is there ever a danger that the film then comes out and then someone who is at one of these locations, be it a hotel or at the airlines, actually sees the film afterwards and goes, wait a minute, I don't remember a permit being issued for that, or is that just unlikely, or has that ever happened? Does anything come back after a film?
Well, there's always that danger.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes.
Sure everybody could hear.
So the question is regarding like shooting without permits and sort of if somebody, using likenesses. So what we mostly tried to avoid was, so we shot it in a way where you kind of kept all the people out of focus, and like you notice like in certain shots like you don't see people's faces, or they're so out of focus that you can't tell, or you only see people's backs of heads. We only ran into that issue in a couple places like the airport, things like that, but we were very careful in editing because the way we shot it was we just let the camera roll, so we shot a ton of footage. So we just tried to take the parts that didn't sort of reveal anybody's faces. It was one of those things where it was like that was a potential risk, but the sort of desire to make the movie within the budget that we had overrode that essentially, and I knew that like we were spending so little that if the movie never got released, like a proper release, it wasn't ever it wasn't a thing where we were like, great, we've spent $500,000 and now we need to make this money back, and we can't because we didn't do it in the appropriate way. So, you know, yeah, like we didn't have location agreements for a lot of stuff, and nobody's ever come back, but we tried to avoid showing logos, we tried to avoid this, we were in public places for the most part. And so it wasn't as big of a concern in that regard. And the other thing, you know, people sort of can view it however they want, but a lot of times what we kind of realized was, well, one, the other thing that we did was in order to release it, we had to get E&S insurance, which is like, or E&O insurance, sorry. E&O insurance was like errors and omissions, which covers you in terms of that liability. So like you have to get that if you're going to release a movie, and any distributor will require it. And so we talked to them because we were like, listen, we use like, you know, we're on a Triumph motorcycle and we didn't talk to Triumph. You know, we're in these airports and locations. The guys are like, it's not a big deal. Like, it's not really like, you're not disparaging Triumph. You know, you're not saying, and he's like, technically you could even have a character on a motorcycle and she's like, nice bike. And he's like, this is the worst piece of crap ever. You could still do that because it's considered an opinion as opposed to like a statement of fact. So there are all these things we learned afterwards that sort of allowed us to see how we could get away with it. And the other thing that kind of in terms of permits was, you know, permits kind of give you permission to be there at that moment, but they're not required after that. So like if you're able to shoot and get away with it, you know, especially on a public street, nobody stops you, the permit's worthless after that. Nobody's going in and checking your permit directory to say, wait, I think they were on there. Were they on there on that date? They didn't have a permit, so you can't release the film. So it's kind of one of those things where we were a small crew. I mean, it was me, that whole movie was made with me, between, not including cast, 2 or 3 other guys at any given time. So very small crew, very mobile. And again, never bothered. Nobody stopped us. So there were some legal things on the tail end that we kind of found out weren't really as big of a deal as we thought they might be. But we didn't want that to stop us to making the movie, because again, the point was to make the movie, as opposed to like letting things stop you from making the movie.
Question for Joshua. I know you take a lot of pride. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? I know you take a lot of pride in your $6,000 budget. The music, I would imagine, was composed, recorded, mixed, sweetened, all by yourself, or I would imagine probably a fraction of that $6,000 budget. Can you please talk about that, seeing it's a feature film, long length?
Yeah, so like I said, I've been doing stuff for like 15 years, and my time at Zyker, working with Zyker, introduced me to a lot of really great people, and so the composer of this was Bill Brown. He did the music for CSI New York for like the whole run of the show, and has done Dominion and a lot of other things. And he and I worked together on a project at Zyker's, and I sort of came to him he'd done a short of mine. And I came to him with the movie layover. I'm like, this is my first feature. I have no money. Would you be willing to do the score? And he said absolutely. He loved the movie. He loved the relationship that we had. He loved working for me because I knew that I was coming to him with something different, something interesting. I wasn't coming to him with a cop show or something like that. It was like, I want you to do something different than what you usually do. And then with him, and what I found is below a certain budget level, whether it's $0 or $10,000 or sort of up to like 40 or 50, they just, as long as you allow the composers to retain the rights to the music, they're sort of open and willing to work with you. But if you're trying to demand ownership of the music, they're not going to get, like the publishing rights, they won't give that up for like less than at least $50,000.
Great.
So it was a favor. A lot of the stuff was a favor play. I'd sort of worked with a lot of guys and paid them a little money, and they really liked the relationship. Like my sound guys came in and did it for nothing, and so it was, or like very little. And it was one of those things where they loved the movie and they loved the project and they loved the relationship, working relationship that we had. So they were willing to do me a solid on the first movie.
So just a quick follow-up. So did Bill Brown actually play the guitar?
I believe, yeah, he was the guitarist. No, did not get production insurance. Which, you know, yeah. I mean, like, here's the thing, right? Like, there's a proper way to make a movie, get insurance, get permits, get stuff. That takes money. I just did a movie where we had to get permits. I mean, I usually get permits, but I don't have to personally deal with it. But like, I did a movie recently where we we only permitted a section of the shoot because it was a big shootout scene, and it was the biggest nightmare. LA is terrible with permits. Like, you got to go down there in hand, you got to pay cash or with the cashier's check. It's like the worst system in the world for getting a permit, and it costs you. It's like $1,200 to get a permit. You know, you go to New York, it's free. They give you free police. It's insane. LA for being a movie town is like, it's a horrible infrastructure for actually getting a movie made. And we just said it wasn't worth it. Because the fact is like, one, I may be wrong, so do your research, but I believe if you're under a certain number of people, you're not required, and you don't have anything on the sidewalk, you're not picking up parking spaces, you're not required to get a permit. So we were like, well, we're 4 people, and I think the limit's 3, so one person will just go hide. And again, it just would have been a nightmare to try and do that because we shot over weekends. We shot, and same with production insurance. It would have been a nightmare. We would have had to insure ourselves for 6 weeks, 7 weeks, when we were only shooting for 12 days. And so we just, I'm not going to lie, we skirted a lot of things, but we got the movie made. And again, if it had not come out, we'd spent so little that it kind of didn't really matter. It would have been a different process if we were spending $100,000, if we were spending $200,000, $500,000. We were sort of beholden to the person that gave us the money to say, we need to make sure this makes it back. It was, I don't want to say it was a calling card type of situation, but it was kind of a calling card type of situation. We got lucky.
Come in hand. I don't know what to do here. So I'm just going to start up front and work my way back. I know you've raised it on a few times, so okay.
What were you generating the burn?
He asked about the particles for the sketch look. I believe I did those in After Effects with a plugin called Trapcode Particular. Some of the other particles in the tree environment were done in Nuke, and some were done in 3ds Max with particle flow. So it sort of depended on what look I needed at the time. Learned a lot about particles in the process.
Going from left to right. So fellow in the gray shirt, and you and the fellow in the blue shirt.
Joshua, can you talk about the decision to make a feature with $6,000 as opposed to going a short? Because it's, you talked about it as a calling card, and it seems like features are still more of a calling card, even if you have to spread $6,000 over a lot more time when you could kind of concentrate it. Can you just talk about how that decision was made to not make it short, or not to condense it and have more money per minute?
Yeah, I made a lot of shorts. I made a short, the short you saw in my reel that had Mark Margolis in it where they're in the desert was a short called Dig that I kind of made where I did the right thing, right? I spent $40,000, I shot on 2 Reds, permitted everything, we had trailers, we had Mark Margolis in it, Aaron Himmelstein, like we went after great actors, all this stuff, and really as top-notch as we could be. It took place in 1963, so we had period cars and period wardrobe and all the stuff that you're like, oh, it's sexy, it looks great, like beautiful lenses, all that kind of stuff. Dig has not even come close to getting me what Layover got me, and I spent a fraction of the money. So shorts are great, but so many people are making shorts nowadays, and the fact is that regardless of the professionalism of a short and how good it looks, people want to know that you can tell a story for 90 minutes. And you're seeing a lot of guys come out and do like these VisFX shorts, they're kind of basically a VisFX like reel. They're 5 minutes long and they get like a ton of attention, and the studio gobbles up these directors, and they buy the project, and nobody's making a movie. Because these guys are getting these projects that are $100 million budgeted films. And the studio goes, wait a second, we're not going to give these guys $100 million to make a movie? Like, that's insane. Like we're not going to, so suddenly everything stalls, and then then you're not making a movie, and so I think that, like, to me, what was the sort of, and again, like, this isn't like, oh yeah, I just did this like huge $100 million Fox movie. Like, I'm still very early on, and Layover's gotten me that next step, which gets me the next step and the next step. But it really has been that people responded to the story, and people responded to the work. So the shorts were great, and they were great practice and they were a great experience and they got me time on set and they got me time working with the crew, but nothing's come close to getting me what Layover got me. I mean, I did a short, like this sort of Superman short, which I was like, okay, I'll do the VFX thing. You saw a couple clips in there and we were like doing this Superman short. And again, just nobody really cared in a weird way. And maybe that just didn't hit in the right way or just didn't hit at the right time. But I've just found, it's weird. I think like there's literally a like features club, and kind of once you've done it, and if you do a good enough job, like people start to gain attention because you know, you make a short for 50 grand, and people are going, okay, maybe we want you to make a movie, you know, for us, and maybe that gets you a $200,000 movie or something like that. But like if you're talking $1 million plus, they're like, can this guy put together a 90-minute feature, you know, that sort of makes sense and tells a story? And so I think it's still an easier way for people to get a sense of that story, which was always frustrating me because I made this great short, like I spent a lot of money on it. Why hasn't it gotten me anything, you know? And I had to go make a French language movie for $6,000 or to get a job. So it was a bit of a weird thing, but it was like a testament to sort of where the industry is, which is still just the power of sort of a feature length storytelling.
Here comes the microphone.
I do love the sense of going guerrilla and understanding what you need to cut out in editorial. I think that's because if you're going to just be there and you have to then reposition to not get the Hilton Hotel logo and then to shoot wild and then cut it out and post. I like that. I encourage it, the whole non-permitting thing, but who was it that was student that also rendered in France? Which one? I rendered in France. Now, as a student here at USC, do they not also offer you rendering services?
It's a tricky question. There is a render farm, but I haven't had a lot of success with it. The nodes aren't active, that kind of thing. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that all of the computers in all of our labs are connected to this render farm, but most of the time they're either in use or they're off. So when you actually want to use the render farm, there's not a lot available.
The farm here is basically not big enough to handle. We make in the. Whoa. Hello. We make 1,500 short films a year just in the production division, and one feature. So there's a lot of pressure on the pipeline, and to build. And when you run a school, you have to build the facilities. You know, we build a church for Christmas, right? You have to build everything for the end of the year when everybody is rendering, everybody's mixing, everybody's doing everything. Right. Yes. And so it's a you know, it's a real toss-up. Is that, you know, how big in an era when you can now render on the cloud or you can find rendering deals off-site somewhere that are probably going to, in many cases, work out better for the production. How much money do we want to spend to build our farm? What's that? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Fellow in blue shirt.
Quick question, for the $6,000 budget, realistically, how much of that was spent on food?
Well, so here's the funny thing, right? Because you think, oh, you got to feed everybody. So we didn't intentionally do this, but Layover takes place all at night, right? So we shot in May. Yeah, we shot in May and of 2013. So it'd get dark around 8. And so that's when we start shooting. So we'd start shooting at 8, and then we'd shoot until about 4 a.m. That was kind of our limit, because we were shooting weekends, so we weren't like suddenly on nights for 2 weeks and made it work. So the funny thing is, like, people came to set having already eaten, and we'd get to like the 6 hour, you know, because we shot SAG, we did it through SAG New Media, because we were thinking of a digital. It never got a theatrical release, so it just went digital release. So we did it through SAG New Media, and so we got to the 6 hour mark, and we'd be like, do you guys want to stop for a half hour to eat, or do you want to finish in an hour and go home. They were like, we want to go home. So like we'd end up like maybe we'd get a pizza, but like it was so late, you know, like if you're not on a normal schedule, you're not really that, you know, you kind of maybe have a piece of pizza or something like that. So I think it was like, it might have been under $500 that we spent. Because again, it was 5-6 people on set at any given time, and we were all like, let's just finish out the hour and go home and go to bed.
Young lady right
You mentioned you shot on weekends. In total, in terms of days, how long did it take you to shoot?
I think it was like 12 days, roughly. But I don't know exactly. Because the weird thing is we didn't shoot full 12-hour days. We'd shoot about 8 hours. Like I said, we kind of started at 8, and we'd all peter out around 4. And so we didn't even have like full shooting days, basically. So yeah, I think it was like if you added up all the hours, it came out to about 12 days. But it was about six weekends of shooting.
Sorry, I have to do sort of parliamentary, which is if you haven't spoken, I'll go to you first, right? So, anybody else have any questions? Mike.
Question for some of the students, more or less. You know, if you have an idea, how hard is it, or what are the drawbacks of trying to get that idea from your head onto film? You know, as far as, you know, I don't know if some of you are better at, you know, writing scripts or stories and all that kind of stuff, but if you're not good at that, how do you get to the point where you can get your content on film?
Like, sorry, like taking it from idea to an actual product. Kind of like for me, just keep reworking it until it's the most efficient version before you ever go out and shoot. Like rewriting the script 20 or 30 times, and then doing the same with storyboards. That like when we did ours, I think I went through like 3 or 4 drafts of storyboards, just kind of jettison shots that weren't going to work.
He storyboards every shot in the film. It's great for me.
Yeah. Sorry, did that answer the question?
Yeah.
Then?
Did you do like any previs or map out anything that along those lines, especially on the visual effects side of it?
Not in terms, like all kind of analog of like floor plan storyboards, nothing like no animatics for previs. But it worked, and like kind of going out with a 5D and just sitting in location. Kind of we sat for like 8 hours in some locations and just saw where the light would hit at different points. So we wouldn't have to waste time lighting if we knew where the sun would be when, that everyone would be backlit. So just kind of being very anally prepared helped us. Yeah.
This question is for Sam. Sam, how many hours a week are you putting into your YouTube channel? Because I'm trying to imagine you're a full-time student, and it looks like you have a full-time job. So I'm kind of trying to figure this out.
It's a lot. It's hard.
Do you ever sleep?
Sometimes. No, it's a lot of work. But you know, I just love doing it. So I don't look at it like it's, you know, like I'm working. But yeah, I mean, there are definitely tips and tricks for us on our YouTube page to be able to really push the stuff out consistently, and that's what we're trying to learn. And you know, for instance, Chalk Warfare, that's something that I made in high school, and I think it took 4 months. And that was also like a month of me kind of not wanting to touch the footage for a while and just let it like resonate in my head and figure out how I'm gonna approach this thing after we shot it. But yeah, I mean, we realized that, you know, it takes 4 months. If it took 4 months to make that, there are ways that we could have saved that time, like by paying, you know, up front to be able to have plexiglass guns, you know, do something to have this be way more effective and efficient. And then, you know, our Snapchat video, we are constantly, our team is constantly referring to that video as how we should be modeling a lot of our work, because we shot it in 2 hours, and then we edited it in 8 days, and then we just uploaded it. So we were just like, one day we just thought of the idea, and we're like, yeah, we're gonna go shoot that. We're just gonna go shoot it. There were some effects that I had never done before, and we just did it. quickly, efficiently, had it come out, and it was one of our more successful ones to be able to, or to have produced that month.
Question for Josh. What was your experience making a feature and finding quality actors and instilling the confidence that you're going to be able to pull off such a low budget feature?
Well, you know, I'd worked with every actor in the movie I'd worked with before, in sort of a different context. And so like Natalie, who plays the lead, and Bella, who plays her friend, who both speak French, I knew they spoke French. So that's actually why I decided to do French. If they spoke Italian, I probably would have made a neo-realist film instead of a French New Wave. And so, you know, and it was really just, what was really interesting was kind of writing for them and writing for their range and writing for what I knew they could do. Because they're young, you know, and they don't have like tons and tons of experience. And so what I found was bad acting happens when you ask an actor to do something that they're not really capable of doing, right? Crying, getting upset, whatever. So like with Natalie, I sort of, because I'd worked with her, I understood what her range was and I understood the best way to use her. And so I wrote a character that was like very French, kind of didn't give a, you know, didn't really care, and like was very level. And, you know, she's brilliant in that role. So it's writing to the actors, it's writing a story that I knew I could pull off. You know, the French was really interesting because Carl, who plays the motorcyclist, was the only like true Parisian on set. So he did all the translating. He translated the whole script, and then he was on set listening to make sure the grammar of the French was correct, or as correct as it could be. And what that allowed me as a director to do was just concentrate on performance and emotion. And so regardless of whether I was hearing the correct words, I kind of got away from that. I didn't have to pay attention to whether they hit the comma in the right way or whatever. I was able to just kind of play the audience, you know, that's just kind of experiencing it, and sort of, is that emotion coming through? Is the performance coming through? Is that all working? Because the words are secondary at this point. So it was, again, it was a process of having been on set a lot and had this experience and worked with guys like Mark Golis, who's like, you know, an Emmy nominee, and kind of getting as much time on set to have as much time with actors in that experience as possible.
I think that, yeah.
For all the scenes in Layover where you're walking around in an airport with a tight shot, did you guys use anything to stabilize the footage, like whether it was gear or software?
So no. So we shot. So like I said, it was shot on a 5D. All of the lens actually was the 24-105 f4, which I say that because it's kind of, we shot. I mean, shooting this movie on an f4 is ridiculous because like we were using natural light, so we were always at like 32 or 6400 ISO, especially at night. But what that lens has is image stabilization. So the lens, like the camera, I didn't even have a rig. It was this. It was like the bare camera, bare lens, not autofocus, like trying to just looking in the back of the monitor. And I was operating the whole time because we didn't have anything, you know, we didn't have director's view, you know, village or any of that. So it was like me operating the whole time, and it was like just trying to make sure it was in focus. But knowing that if it wasn't, one, I don't mind if you buzz a little bit, but two, like knowing that we'll just cut that part out, you know, if we don't have that kind of control over it. So yeah, it ended up being pretty smooth, but you can see, again, you can see the like image caliber, you know, correcting the image in some of this stuff. But one of the things that helped, because I knew we were a bare camera, my hand can shake a little. And if you don't have that stabilization on it, just like you start to really see it. Whereas I knew I still wanted that handheld effect and really feel like we were just right there with her.
After that guy in the t-shirt, and then the guy in the blue shirt. And I think we may be out of time.
Great. Thanks for returning back to me. So this is a question for Sam, Andrew, and Johnson. You know, I know with low budget, especially effects generated compositing films, you know, pre-production is very, very critical to a successful and efficient production. So I'm curious as to how much you do storyboarding and to what degree those storyboards are tight versus loose, and literally is the storyboarding down to every single shot, And if so, what is the revision process going between the technical director and the actual live action director?
Storyboarding is a little funny for our work. Usually when we work with a client, we have to storyboard. We have to have that reference for them. But a lot of the stuff we do, and it's really funny actually, Chalk Warfare, we actually found that it was more efficient to not storyboard it. It's all in here. And the way that I actually prepared for that video in particular was I looked at it and I said, okay, what's the most effective way to really have everyone understand what they're going to be doing this? Because we have a story written down. And what's fun about Chalk Warfare 3 actually is we made a video on our channel asking people what they wanted to see in the new one. So it was a lot of those weapons in the video and the ideas were fan driven. So we utilized that as a way to basically in the outline say, have it color coded and also by weapon. So you'd say RPG, kills, dubstep gun. And then you have the colors written out as well. And then when we would get there on set, especially because it's low budget, and Chalk Warfare was always something where it's like, hey, it's it's our buddy shooting a film. There was back end work making it and a lot in post, but it's still buddy shooting a film and we're having a good time. So when we'd have the guys show up, we would basically assign them their gun there, and certain characters we knew we wanted a certain look. And we had those friends picked out prior, but for the rest of it, we were able to really just able to work that video out by having that simple outline, and then we just had the story written out, and I had the images all in my head. And then for bigger projects, we do storyboard. Very rarely do we do previs. A lot of times with YouTube content in particular. There's not really enough time to do that. Kind of has diminishing returns, honestly. But for bigger projects, anything off YouTube, oh yeah, we'll do it.
Yeah, so I storyboard a lot and do progressively more detailed revisions where I think Johnson saw the third one, not the first two, where those are more stick figures, but it's kind of how I wrap my head around a scene or just kind of start to feel it out. You can see the location and kind of see what won't work. If there's a camera angle that won't work, and it kind of helps you with writing and directing. For me, and I'm not great with words. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but being able to show Johnson something like that shot we have where the birds fly through was all pretty tightly storyboarded.
I was going to say, we spent several hours together going through the storyboards and the script step by step, and in most cases, his storyboards were great. I saw the shot. I knew we could achieve it. In some, like the Steadicam through the forest shot, we talked a lot about it, and is that something we can achieve? And but at least the vision was clear. We had storyboards for all the sort of keyframes along the way, and I thought, why not shoot it? We'll cover our asses with a simpler version of it. But let's go big. So yeah.
The storyboarding process allows you to basically block out your plates, right? So that you make sure the camera angles were correct. You kind of
Yeah. Exactly. In fact, the Trello board, the project management thing I showed, before there were screenshots of the plates, there were screenshots of the storyboards. And then when we had plates, I just replaced them. And in most cases, they're nearly identical.
Last question.
This one goes for Sam. It's actually for Sam, it's actually kind of two questions. The first one is, how much money do you tend to spend on your videos, on each one? And the second one is, how do you come up with these ideas?
So I'll answer them in order. The first one, it's very random. It depends really on the project and how much we're willing to pay on it. Sometimes, some of our best videos, we did for $0, and some that we spent $1,000 or $2,000 on, they don't do as well. It's really interesting, and that kind of goes back to what I was saying on YouTube in particular. You can spend a lot of money making something and you can really polish it. And then that's when it starts having diminishing returns because people aren't really inspired by it, and it just kind of looks like a feature film. You know, a lot of, and especially with visual effects content, you know, stuff like Vine and Instagram. I've got friends who make a lot of very simple 15-second videos where they built businesses out of, you know, doing jump cuts and very magic tricks. And we look at that and we say, people look at that and they say, oh my gosh, how are they doing that? Like, oh my gosh, they freak out. And then, you know, you go to the movies and you see Finding Dory, but you don't really look at that. People don't have the same reaction for some reason, and I think it's really just that aesthetic of, you know, I'm watching this on my phone, I could have made this, but I can't make that. He must do magic. But yeah, I mean, for instance, like Chalk Warfare, that video in particular, and we made that one a couple of years ago. That third one that we watched, the majority of the money actually went into paying a cop to be on the lookout, because we were in a very sketchy area. We like those grungy locations for our videos, but they're not necessarily the safest to shoot in. So we paid him $30 an hour. But other than that, I think, you know, that video we spent $1,300 on, and that's not including visuals because, you know, I'm doing all the visuals myself, and it would be a lot more expensive to pay somebody to do that. But yeah, and then how we come up with ideas. You know, it's really fun to come up with the ideas. It's mainly just, you know, me and Eric discussing things, you know, and seeing what's popular. You know, I'm cruising around Facebook yesterday and I see Pokemon Go is a really popular thing right now. Everyone's talking about it. And like, oh, it'd be so funny to do like a Pokemon Go video where the guys, you know, they pop up in a tree and you see Pikachu in your view, but it's actually just a dude in like a yellow hoodie, and they're chasing after him, and this guy's like freaking out, and they try to suck him into their phone, but it doesn't work. Like, you know, we just come up with the ideas from, you know, just fun ideas, just clever ideas, and that seems to really, you know, spark on the internet, and, you know, stuff that's popular, stuff that people can relate to.
Okay. Do we have time for one last question? Do we have to cut it off? Real short question. Right there.
So on the Pigs and Fly film, how did you drive traffic to your Kickstarter campaign?
It's kind of like Kickstarter's weird in terms of like you want to kind of count your chickens before they hatch, where like our producer had kind of like emailed people months in advance, just kind of like, hey, this is what we're working on. And then when we finally released it, kind of like they had already familiar with the project and kind of already like planned. And then like we kind of worked with Kickstarter to kind of like email them to build a relationship to get like staff picked. So it's kind of like a combination of different Facebooks and kind of still like I don't like we would get random donations from a guy in London that gave us like 2,000 that was thinking about applying to USC, and maybe he thought we could help him get him in. We can't, but it's always weird. Yeah. But mostly is like our producer is kind of he comes from Stark and is much more like better at, I guess, financial planning, and just kind of, we were just prepared and like kind of slowly built it. And like by the time people had seen the video, they had already heard about the project, so it wasn't like a surprise. It's just doing that.
One of the things about crowdfunding really quick is like success begets success. So like you said, like one of the keys to it is lining up like a good solid chunk of your funding prior to ever launching, so that when you do launch and hit go, you've got people coming in, you've got, say you're trying to raise 20, you've got 10 already. And then people go, oh, this project's like doing well, it's successful. Like, and one of the secrets is you talk to people offline. And so it's that kind of, it's that secret of like success begetting success. And so there's a lot of sort of tips like that and tricks like that, sort of being successful in that space and not successful in that space.
And it's also definitely really important to have a lot of visual imagery prior to you making the page. So anything from storyboards to just concept art, stuff that people can actually look at and get a feel for what this thing's going to actually be like. Because, you know, you are asking for their money. And then, you know, one thing that we always say too for our videos is Kickstarter may be big, and a lot of people are going on Kickstarter, but the internet is bigger. So, seek out avenues where, if you're making a fan film, like a Han Solo fan film, seek out all the Star Wars blogs and stuff that will post about it, and then that's how you tap into another fan base and a community, and that can help increase your funding.
Okay. We have to cut it off here. I want to thank everybody for coming and hanging in with us and learning a lot this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for really having great dialogue. Thank you.